That's grand, and I want to thank Deputy Ryan and Sinead Mercer, the researcher, for producing this bill. We fully support it. I just want to ask the Department in the first instance, do you regard workers as stakeholders in just transition?
Yes, workers are stakeholders in the just transition.
And when you said in answer to, I think it was Deputy Chambers, on the question of the terms of reference, that the view was taken that continuing the IR structures within Boardmona should continue to operate as they are. From whom did you get that view? Did you get it from the workers, or did you get it from Boardmona or Mr. Donlan, the CEO? Or was it just a view that you dreamt up in your just transition imagination?
I think, Deputy, the approach being taken is to use structures to address the problem that's in place. And I've gone through a number of times the terms of reference of the Just Transition Commissioner, and there are structures in place with the Joint Industrial Relations Council and the Workplace Relations Commission to deal with IR issues in Boardmona, and I've highlighted the separate and distinct role that the Just Transition Commissioner will take, and that he will engage with, among other stakeholders, relevant trade unions and workers' representatives, and is to recommend to government when that work is done the essential elements of a just transition for workers and communities most affected. And that includes any additional actions measured deemed appropriate, optimal structures or processes to support coordinated delivery of the just transition in the Midlands, developing liaison channels between institutions in the regions and central government. So there's a kind of quite a lot in the terms of reference in terms of what the Commissioner is to do.
So the Department take the view that IR structures are there that can continue to operate and deal with redundancy issues, pensions, seasonal workers, the terms of their work, their hours of work. They're all IR issues. But are they distinctively different IR issues to ones that arise as a result of the closure of peat production? And therefore, are they distinctly different as IR issues to the issues that would come under the question of just transition when you're appointing a commissioner to look after it?
Well, I suppose, Deputy, I can say no more than what I've said already in terms of industrial relations issues that arise within the terms of reference of the Just Transition Commissioner. It is envisaged that the Commissioner won't have a direct role in relation to industrial relations matters in Boardmona, and they will be dealt with through the existing IR structures.
So in other words, there's a Just Transition Commissioner who strictly is limited in terms of the just transition that's delivered to workers, although you describe workers as stakeholders.
But we're talking about a distinct piece in relation to industrial relations and industrial relations structures. But in terms of delivering the wider or essential elements of the just transition, the terms of reference of the Commissioner are quite broad in terms of having a coherent response and ensuring that other employment becomes available, that workers end up being retrained as appropriate, and funds have been put in place for that through the budget. The Just Transition Fund is in place. There's money also for a programme of retrofitting in the Midlands. So I don't think there's any difference in terms of the sort of outcome that everyone wants to see in the Midlands. There's also extra money being provided for peat rehabilitation, and I think what we're talking about really is the structures to deliver the outcome that we all agree should happen. And I suppose what I'm trying to outline today is the structures that the government has put in place as a matter of urgency in response to developments this year.
Okay, so I'll just try it from a different angle. So when workers find themselves redundant, out of work, without seasonal work, without proper redundancy, without proper access to pension schemes, as a consequence of the closure of peat production, that's an IR issue. But what a just transition involves is finding them a place that they can retrain or maybe find another job. Forget about all the other business that put them in the position where they're out of work or need to be upskilled. That's nothing to do with just transition. So the transition happens in whatever way it happens, maybe unjustly, maybe very unjustly, but then the Just Transition Commissioner tries to pick up the pieces by retraining them. Does that really cover the definition of a Just Transition Commissioner?
In terms of, like, I've gone through some of the supports that government is offering, but you know, I listed earlier as well all the government departments that form part of the group being chaired out of Taoiseachs, and that includes the Department of Employment Affairs, Social Protection, and we've also mentioned the work of NESC as well, which is looking to the future and talking about proactive planning in terms of what will arise going forward. As I said, this year there were certain things that escalated the exiting from peat, and I think the government has responded very quickly. I know the Department of Employment and Social Affairs and other government agencies are engaging closely with workers affected in relation to available retraining, education, employment opportunities, and exploring with affected workers opportunities through schemes such as community employment and the Rural Social Scheme. I know as well the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation, 60 million competitive regional development fund administered by Enterprise Ireland.
Mr. Carroll, do you mind if I interrupt you, because I only have 10 minutes?
3 million.
I only have 10 minutes.
What I'm saying
your
is
answer is use no, and you're not answering my question. I really want you to just say yes or no, or expand on it a bit, but answer the question. Do you see the issues to do with the loss of work, the question of pensions, redundancy, how temporary workers are treated, entirely disconnected to the next piece, which is what happens to them then? Do they get retrained? Do you see them completely disconnected, or do you see them interrelated?
I mean, I see all the consequences of job loss that arise from transitioning out of fossil fuels, decarbonising, being dealt with as part of the just transition. And so if they lose their pensions, or they're not getting access to the voluntary redundancy scheme, or temporary workers don't get treated properly, is that not part of the Just Transitioners Commissioner's brief to be able to say this is unjust the way they're being dealt with? In terms of dealing with all those consequences, we have IR structures to deal with some of them.
So you do see them separate?
And then we have just transition structures to deal with others. So, I mean, we have...
So you see them separate? That's all I'm asking. You do see them separate? Obviously you do.
They're all part of issues that need to be dealt with, and we have different structures for dealing with them.
So the IR issues that I've spelt out have nothing to do with just transition. They're dealt with by IR, and just transition is a separate piece.
They're dealt with through the IR structures.
Okay, so you see them separately. Can I just ask to finish up the David Joyce from ICTU, please, David? If Deputy Ryan's bill was passed in the morning, would you be happy that it would deal in a just and fair way with Bord na Móna and other workers that may come down the track who are facing loss of job because of decarbonising our workplaces?
Well, we've outlined in our opening statement that we think that if structures such as the type envisaged in the bill were in place, perhaps we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in the Midlands in terms of Bord na Móna. I think, generally speaking, we're here talking about an architecture for delivering a just transition, which I think all of us agree is something we want to achieve. And I suppose there's a frustration on our side generally that while the word just transition is now bandied around quite a lot, nobody in government has come to us where the concept originated and said, how do you think this should be delivered? And it's not just us. I mean, they should equally be talking to employers and to communities But you know, what we're lacking is a dialogue at national level as to how this is delivered. And the bill, in the absence of that, the bill is an impetus to that discussion, and that's why we welcome it very much. I think you know, it has the potential to address many of the issues that we've been discussing here today and last week. But just transition, one of the key elements of just transition is social dialogue. And we, as representatives of, you know, hundreds of thousands of workers on the island, should be part of the dialogue in coming up with how we do just transition, and not recipients of it, but, you know, active participants in designing it and in ensuring that it's delivered.
So just to be clear, David, the ICT was never consulted on the terms of reference of the Just Transition Commissioner.
That's true as far as I'm aware, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And you represent hundreds of thousands of workers.
We do.
Senator Joe O'Reilly.
Thank you.